Hey, welcome to Radicalized, where truth survives and we got your back. I'm Heidi Cuda. I'm here with Jim Stewartson, High Fidelity, and Sean Connor, OGs in the battle against disinformation. Gentlemen, right after we dropped our super smoking hot episode 3 with Brent Allpress, Jim got permanently banned from Twitter. We put together a timeline. We put together a timeline to show exactly how that went down. Sean, do you have that timeline?
I do. Let me pop it up here. 1 sec.
Yeah, why don't you pop that up? Pop it up.
You know, what did you guys do? Normally I'm the guy making drama, and here comes Jim.
All right, so we're just going to go through a quick breeze-through on Gimpgate. On November 29th, 2021, at 6 a.m., we dropped the 3rd episode, Smoking Hot, so much incredible information talking about the pathways to radicalization and how we can combat this with some radical empathy. And by 6:10, Jim woke up to the news of what happened then, Sean.
Here you go. Dear Jim, you're fucked. Twitter.
So Jim got permanently banned. And then what happened next, Sean?
Then I called Jim. Then Sean calls Jim. And then Sean calls Heidi. And then Heidi promptly cries, followed by mobilizing a large Twitter activist community to start arguing on Jim's behalf that they misinterpreted the word GIMP and sundry other faults. Yes.
We will be explaining what exactly happened to earn that permanent ban. That the word GIMP was utilized in context of Joe Rogan and Bannon.
Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon.
So we mobilized. I was calling Hi-Fi. Hi-Fi had overslept because he'd been up all night battling trolls. And at 9 a.m., we issued the official statement on Jim's permanent ban.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. That was key.
9:10, Gimpgate starts.
Yeah, 9:10 we got Gimpgate starting.
Yep.
By 9:22, Kathy Griffin weighs in, our dear friend Kathy Griffin, and she starts the Free Jim Stewartson, or she mobilizes the Free Jim Stewartson army.
Unfortunately, Kathy Griffin's well-intentioned with Bring Back Jim Stewartson didn't catch on, but Free Jim Stewartson did.
Yes, that's right. And by 9:52, go ahead.
By 9:52, Heidi tweets, "We are all Jim Stewartson," changing her profile photo to a picture of Jim, followed by a legion of other people changing their profile picture to pictures of Jim.
It was so weird.
Causing me huge anxiety attacks all day long because I thought Jim was tweeting simultaneously from across the world.
Oh yeah, it was hysterical.
Keep in mind, this episode. We've done 3 incredible episodes, but this one was incredibly strong. So for it to be immediately, for one of our core generals to be taken out permanently off of Twitter, that meant like 18 months of work was just gone. So there was pain upon pain upon pain. And then what happens?
Then they get some international press from independent anti-fascist band. These are the best headlines, by the way. Anti-fascist banned by Twitter for calling Joe Rogan Steve Bannon's GIMP.
That is some bucket list shit right there. Look at that. My work here is done. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Hanging in the loop.
Right.
Here we go.
Next day. And so one thing that's not on the timeline was the 16 times that Hi-Fi called me because I was very sad and very emo, and Hi-Fi kept me strong all through the night, love bombing me, making sure that I was going to survive. And then there I was, so sad. At 12:59 p.m., Jim reappears in our DMs, and lo and behold, his permanent ban was reinstated.
Yep, he's back.
Cracks Knuckles.
Cracks Knuckles is back. 6 p.m.
So Jim,
Cracks Knuckles, that was the best part, and
then, of course, we had a Twitter Spaces celebration. So, Jim, before we get into some of the news of the day, do you want to just say one thing about Gimpgate to our audience who were so incredibly brilliantly supportive of you?
Yes.
First of all, I just want to clarify, I did not call Joe Rogan a GIMP. I called him Steve Bannon's GIMP. There's a difference. There really is a difference. And to everybody, all my friends on Twitter and elsewhere, I could not be more honored by the fact that you gave a shit at all, much less put me on billboards and stuff like that.
That's right.
I was bananas. And,
Yeah.
and you know, thank you again. And to the people who are dancing on my fucking grave, noted.
Yeah, it was. We saved Ferris.
Hi, Mike.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful, and the fact that a oligarch, as Hi-Fi points out, an oligarch slash Arabic oil money newspaper was the one to give us the headline was like an extra layer of cool. It was an extra layer of cool.
In London, they gave it. What?
Of course it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an incredible influence war, and there we were, but we became influencers in that moment. We got our core guy back. It was.
I
good.
had no idea, man. I was sitting there on Medium with my
He was
typing away angrily.
He cranked out 2 Medium blogs.
I tell Jim what I told you.
Awesome.
What's that?
From the desk of Jim Stewartson.
Yeah. It was. I have been a publicist in a previous life, so it was easy for me to start doing publicist type stuff.
They only made me stronger.
I know. One thing before we get into the news is we do want to say thanks to you all, our numbers spiked through the roof. So what was not a publicity stunt, but was a real permanent ban that became unpermanent, actually really brought some attention to the show, including my friend Gail Ann Hurd of Terminator, Aliens, and Walking Dead fame, who thinks this is the best podcast at all of all in dealing with this kind of terrain that we deal with. So shout out to Gail. But thank everybody so much. All right, so let's get right into the word of the week, which is actually the phrase of the week. Hi-Fi.
Have we actually had a word of the week yet, or
I think we're going to go with phrase of the week now because they're all phrases.
We have 4 not words of the week.
I got a word for the week. Are you ready?
Let's just.
Okay, let's do it.
Hold on. Let's run it.
Yeah. Get your knowledge on.
I got a new.
Dude, you've been busy.
I got a new plug-in.
I guess
all I want for Christmas is a new plug-in. Okay, so authoritarian capture. That's some serious shit. Lay it on us, Hi-Fi.
All right, authoritarian capture. Authoritarian capture is the control of media, elections, education, courts, other democratic institutions by a populist. And by populist, what I mean is that, the individual says, I'm a man of the people, and some people are behind him, but not the majority of people. So that's a populist. These populist politicians, they take control of these institutions to suppress civil society, which I think every normal human is for, and also populist politics. Populism politics. Basically saying that everyone engages in politics. With some of the voting restrictions that one party is passing in the United States.
And why it's very important is that there was never a day that the majority of the Germans woke up and voted for Hitler. It did not happen. I learned that from Ann Nelson. And why it's important is when we see all this fuckery going on and we're wondering what's happening with the school boards, we're wondering what's happening, with our voter systems. It's part of authoritarian capture. This is something we will talk more about, but it's important that we put that, plant that information.
Indeed. Another thing I'd like to point out is you can actually see this historically in relatively real time if you look at Hungary with Orban, if you look at Belarus with Lukashenko, if you look at what's going on in Poland, what Le Pen is pushing for in France.
I might even say if you look about what DeSantis is doing in Florida, you can throw that in there. So This is really key. And what's interesting is last week when you brought up, I think it was stochastic terrorism, or the week before, that word is now in the zeitgeist. So it's important that we push these phrases in the zeitgeist. And I'm very glad that you opened with that, because we will be talking about it with our rock star, superstar guest, Paul Mason, coming up in just a little while.
That is so cool.
You got to stay with us, of course, because we got Paul Mason coming up as our guest. He's incredible. He wrote How to Stop Fascism and many other important books. And he former BBC Channel 4. And then we also have another Sean Connor, Digital Dissent, at the end as our gift to our viewers. All right, so let's get on to White Matter. Sean, rock and roll.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why hide Fidelity?
Why does it matter? All right. Let me tell you why it matters. Hit the road, Jack. Twitter CEO. By the way, that's awesome, Sean. Thank you. Wow, dude.
The British accent
or something.
It's actually a Welsh accent. No, I don't know if it is or not.
I like it. Whatever it is, I like it.
I'll send you the MP3. Go ahead.
Nice. So, CEO of Twitter, is now former CEO of Twitter. Jack Dorsey stepped down from Twitter. And why does this matter? Well, going back to the phrase of the week, authoritarian capture. There's a gentleman named Singer behind Elliott Investments who has ties to the Manhattan Institute, which is behind a lot of racist surveillance capitalism. What also happened since Jack Dorsey stepped down, Jim got suspended, and we have seen a abuse of some of Twitter's new policies by right-wing accounts to remove information about people doing bad things publicly in their communities. So authoritarian capture being used to silence media.
And I think what basically this means is that we should all be archiving our work on Twitter, which is where this war has been fought since Trump was using it as his bullhorn. We should be archiving our work, and we should already be looking into the future for the next platforms, because it sounds to me like Twitter may end up becoming further right than it potentially is. That's my personal concern.
Yep.
Well, they couldn't make Getter work. They couldn't make Parler work. So now they're coming for Twitter, I guess.
What's up with Truth Social? Anybody heard?
Oh, God,
Jim, what do you say?
Yeah, I just wanted to a little shout out to the Manhattan Institute, which is not, it sounds, just like one of those other institutes, but was actually started by Reagan's CIA director, William.
And Jim freezing
up, Jimmy.
He'll come back.
Yeah,
he'll come back. Repeat that last line again, Jim. So you were just saying by the CIA, Reagan's CIA director,
William Casey, Reagan's CIA director, founded the Manhattan Institute in the 70s. In the early 80s, it started a huge number of racist ops, starting with welfare reform and welfare queens for Reagan in the early 80s, going on to the bell curve, going on to anti-education, it is a long series of racist ops, including broken windows, which was the racist policy in New York City that then, believe it or not, turned into Palantir, turned into a whole bunch of other really dark shit. I have a whole thread on it, and I will put it up, or we'll put it up.
Please do.
In the comments.
I learned, I'm a CPA groupie, because they actually, death and taxes, the CPAs know what's up. And I learned that the biggest welfare queens are the Republican elite, because they certainly go for their government tax breaks. So that's always been a myth and something that really pisses me off personally. And of course, Robert Mercer loves, Manhattan Institute and all that.
Mercer funds it, along with a variety of other fascists and traitors. So,
right. All right. So there
by
we go.
the way, importantly, this is important. Anti-CRT, that whole fucking op is Manhattan Institute. It was started by a little shithead named Christopher Rufo, who is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and one of the nastiest little fuckers on the planet. Sorry.
He is.
I'm just saying. I'm
trying to monetize or something. I don't know.
Speaking the truth. What?
Right. Are we? No, we're not. Say what you want, Jim.
Well, that was a hell of a banging way to start our Why It Matters. So let's move it right along here so we can keep things going.
All right.
So we can get to Paul, but this is exciting, though.
Yes,
this is great
I do want to get to Paul. All right. Maxwell has her moment. Hey, Ghislaine Maxwell, first week in court, we heard from the pilot who said, yeah, I flew Trump and Bill Clinton on Epstein's plane. We heard from, a anonymous victim, Jane. We heard from her boyfriend, Matt, also anonymous. And we heard from the gentleman who ran their household for them. And one thing that has not been pointed out, and perhaps it's been due to sexism, is it's very possible Ghislaine Maxwell could have been Jeffrey Epstein's handler, as pointed out by Jeannie Jardin.
Yeah. All I know is that I used to do a lot of stories on human trafficking when I was working in local broadcast news in LA. And in pimp vernacular, she was called, a woman like that was called the bottom, BITCH. That meant that they were the main woman who was going out, attracting the other women. And judging by many of the court documents that I have read from these young girls, that was who she was, the bottom, I'll just say it, the bottom bitch. And so allegedly, obviously, but, this is so deep. And obviously her father ended up, belly up on the Hudson River. So there's a history.
The rumors are
Robert
he had
Maxwell's
ties to
a whole
Mossad and ties to the CIA.
There's all kinds of fucked up shit.
Robert Maxwell, not a nice guy.
Yeah.
Mogolovich.
And I will just say that I don't think it's a coincidence that, QAnon and a lot of these, bad fictional cult ideologies have sex trafficking in them. I think there is a bunch of very dark, not to be bluing on here, but Epstein is the top of a pyramid of really awful shit.
Yes, yes, blackmailer to the stars too. So
and Trump's BFF.
I know.
So I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of the disinformation out there is around sex trafficking to whitewash their crimes.
Right. And of course, in Trump's orbit are, dozens and dozens of people who are convicted sex traffickers, pedophiles. So the other thing it accomplishes by putting out this narrative is the normalization of that type of world. So therefore, when it really comes to them, in legal cases, it is, I think people are a bit more kind of inured to it. So excellent points, gentlemen, and we'll be watching how this unfolds. And now we have a little bit of news from the mother country.
All right. Russia
well done.
Flexes. Thank you. So what's happening right now is Putin is building up 75 to 175,000 troops along the Ukrainian border at different points, threatening to invade territory. Looks like the Donbass region will be annexed. Putin's causing world chaos because that's what Putin does. That's what Putin needs. He needs chaos for him to operate.
And as we said in the rundown meeting, I think it was a mistake of my dearly beloved President Joe Biden to have met with him in any credible way. He's a war criminal, a parasite on his own country. And I know this team doesn't even believe that he's an authentic president because he's gamed the system in his own country and bled his own people.
He's a fascist dictator. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Like Putin's pure. Putin is a pure fascist. All he cares about is power, money, territory. He wants to accumulate as much as possible.
Right.
He also believes it's a zero-sum game, as all fascists do, meaning that other countries and other entities have to be either taken over or diminished in order for him to gain more power.
I was reading through Alexandria Chalupa's threads the other day, and so apparently there's quite a number of the oligarch, the mafioso, the higher level guys are really pissed off at Putin. So he's kind of trying to patching up some relationships, and he's not in the best favor with the elite ruling class.
Oh, they hate him. They hate him.
Yeah.
They've hated him for a long time. You saw the way he made Oleg Deripaska, look like beg like a dog on camera for him. Yeah, they
Sure.
It's going to be very interesting. I believe in what Gandhi says. The stories never end well for these guys. So it'll be very interesting. And if you look at the history of Russia, Trotsky gets the ice pick. There's not a lot of, look how Mussolini got it. So more to be revealed, but I wouldn't hold out hope that he's going to have a lovely retirement in one of the mansions he grifted from the people. Okay, so you have a little bit of news on news that you broke last week too. You have something positive to talk about.
Something positive to talk about. First off, allow me to say shout out to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network.
Yeah.
You can find them online at antihate.ca. Go give them some love, send them appreciation, buy them a cup of coffee. Because with their information, we were able to report that, Romana Didulo, the Canadian QAnon queen, had been calling for the death of healthcare providers, educators, and politicians.
Yeah, serious shit.
And so we reported, we talked about that Monday morning. Wednesday afternoon, she was picked up by the RCMP for a mental health evaluation and further investigation.
Good.
Excellent.
And she's either another one of those classic grifters that we've been following, or she's batshit. So, we'll see what happens. But that is a bit of
why
good
not
news.
Both?
I know, right? Yeah, I know. What? Just like with Russia, you can't ask binary questions. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
We need like a gold star animation for when we get one.
Oh, right on. Yes. Yes.
Sweet. Put another one on the list.
Sean will have one by the end of this episode. Okay, fantastic. Hi-Fi. Thank you for an incredible news block. And thank you for breezing us through it, because we're so excited about getting into Hellscape and then getting Paul to get us out of this Hellscape. Okay, so let's cue up Jim Stewartson's Hellscape.
All right, let's see if you guys might not see it, but here we go.
Jim Stewartson's Hellscape. Oh, fuck.
Whoops, there it goes.
Oh, fuck.
Oh,
Sorry.
fuck.
All right.
Oh, yeah, amazing. Oh,
Just for you.
fuck. Okay, so we do have some serious oh, fuck shit that happened, and I'd love Jim to get us into it and get us through it, because a bunch of choir boys in Best Buy uniforms showed up at the Capitol.
We're gonna show that.
You want to run it now? Sure.
Yeah, let's show that. Just a minute of it.
Just a pinch, man. I gotta do it without headphones.
Oops.
All right, that's enough.
Yeah, kill that.
So look, here's the thing. It's not about these fucking LARPers, these idiots running around in their khakis in the Capitol, right? Like, that shit happens in societies. The difference is, what do you do about it when a bunch of fucking Nazis descends on the Capitol? What do you do about that? Well, what the Capitol Police and the DC Police decided to do was protect them. So the problem is that if we do that, if we allow this to happen, if it keeps going, we're going to lose our democracy. We have got to figure out a way to make anti-fascism legitimate, meaning we can, like, fascism's bad. Our fucking cops need to know that. Our government needs to know that. We have got to get real about that.
We got to
And watching these
de-escalate this
cops
shit.
stand around and enable that to happen, to enable them to shout Nazi slogans in front of our house that they almost took over, 10 months ago, pisses me off. And it needs to stop.
And this is why Germany has laws against this kind of shit, because they've seen it before. And Sean, what did you find out about their technotronics?
Which part? With who? With
Patriot Front.
The Patriot Front?
Yeah, didn't you find out something Russia related?
I was looking for that, and through the Andrea Chalupa and things like that. And what I was reading was the ProPublica article, was the article that everyone kept referencing. And so I kept going back to that. I didn't mention Russia necessarily, but the leader of the Patriot Front had ties in earlier organizations to Russia.
Didn't you find out their website or their web domain, or there was some kind of link there?
That's right. Through Raven LeMaven. Is that what you meant by technotronics?
Yes, that's what I meant by technotronics.
She doesn't understand.
Is that an onstage firework? Raven LeMaven, everybody's favorite Twitter spirit animal, digs through the connections on the websites, found that they were hosted by, of course, a Russian hosting company.
Isn't that lovely? That's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, I did have a fake leftist account tell me today. Well, yeah, they all got banned off of American servers and European servers and have to go to Russia now. No, that's not true, because Epic hosts them. So that's I don't know what kind of arguments they're making there.
Well,
just like you don't have to have a .ru email account.
And you guys know one of the leaders of the neo-Nazi movement is living in St. Petersburg, the gangster capital of Russia. So we see this over and over again. But to Jim's point, we got to do something about it. We know that our military is being infiltrated. We know that our law enforcement is being infiltrated through these pathways to radicalization. We got to do something about it. I can't wait to discuss some of this stuff with Paul coming up here. Jim, you also have some interesting news on a new senatorial candidate.
Yes. I don't know if we have any visuals for this guy, but Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, who's dual citizenship, Turkish American, is 100% an op. He is business partners with a number of Mike Flynn business partners. He went into the television business with Nasser Kazemini, who is one of the dirtiest dudes on the planet, he has just a variety of connections to bad actors. I will put that thread in the comments. It's too long to go through it at this point. But they reach all the way back to his sister Saval, who's also director of marketing or something at Google, who was in Afghanistan with Kazemini and Flynn's other partner Bijan Kian, doing psyops in Afghanistan when Flynn was in charge of Army psyop. As far as I know, theirs were off book, but there's some very, very dark, weird shit going on with the Oz family, and there is zero chance that dude should be anywhere near the Senate.
you want to run the video or not? Do you guys want?
Which one?
Oh, we should probably skip it. We're running.
Yeah,
behind.
you know what? Yeah, and you can let Paul know that he can come now because we're getting to our last one. I told him
He's in.
3:45. Oh, great! I'm so excited that he's here. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! You guys get to see me be a fangirl. So yeah, I mean, he's been running around doing disinformation and health, medical disinformation during a fucking global pandemic, and that these guys.
He also said that we really need to open the schools because it will only increase mortality by 2 or 3%.
Yeah, that's right. He did say
you
that.
don't 2 or 3% sacrifice children. Sorry.
It means he's a fucking sociopath, right? You can't, you cannot have that reaction without thinking of people as numbers.
Yes.
Which is not something you want in the Senate. He's also a Swedenborgian, so look that up. It's fucking weird.
Well, I do think just like we need to de-escalate the fascist project, which we'll be talking to Paul about, we need to frickin' de-escalate these TV stars that are really operatives out to harm our democracy.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
I
I'm
gotta say,
glad you brought
Oprah,
it up.
man.
Yeah.
I used to love Oprah,
Yeah, I know.
but the more and more I look into these bad actors, man, like everybody she platforms is
JD
fucked
Vance,
up, including this dude, Dr. Phil,
Dr. Phil. It's a concern. It's a concern.
Pinsky, like
I have a concern.
It's a pattern of bad behavior.
Well, we'll let's put some thought and some investigatory prowess on that.
Yet.
Well, you know what? I mean, honestly, we're going to call it like we see it. This is a show about truth. We want truth to survive. And if some of the iconic people ended up getting, sucked into this really negative world from whatever it could be, whether it's blackmail or, whatever nefarious activities are occurring, we have to call it out. And right now it's looking pretty sus, and that's very terribly disappointing. But these are conversations that we have to have. All right. So I'm looking forward to just you sort of kind of giving us a, do we want to do the GIMP gate explainer, or do we want to get right to Crumblies? I mean,
I think we did the GIMP
I kind of feel like we did the GIMP gate.
Yeah.
But let's just look at Thomas Massey for a minute.
All right.
Okay.
Because I think this is a good segue into Paul.
And just so our audience knows, we had a serious conversation in our rundown meeting about whether or not we would show this image, and we ended up deciding we would blur the faces of the children, and that's because we don't want to normalize this stuff. This is not normal. These children posing with their Christmas tree, this is not normal. These guys are not victims of a liberal cabal that's trying to take away their guns. These are domestic terrorists posing under trees and radicalizing their children to think this is okay, and it's not okay.
It's stochastic terrorism. Like, hey, everybody should have a gun. Let's go get guns, and you're normalizing. How long until the next Rittenhouse?
Well,
right?
How long
until the next Crumble?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
He did this the day after 4 children were murdered.
Right.
Yeah.
The fucking day after, and he did that on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
The entire point of shit like this is to be traumatic, right? Is to continue. This stuff continuously bashes the morality and empathy out of the people who are exposed to it on a regular basis.
That's right.
They start, much less these fucking kids who were handed automatic, weapons to pose for Christmas.
Right.
So look, yes, we should not normalize it. We should not, frivolously share it. On the other hand, we have to look at it. We have to look at it, and we have to say, look, we cannot, this is not acceptable in our fucking society. It's not. And if we don't have laws, if there are no consequences to shit like this, especially from a public official, then we need different laws and more accountability. because it's
That's
not
right.
enough.
Our freedoms are continually being used to erode our democracy. And before we get on to our guests, thank you for that, Jim. That was very powerful. Most of our viewers know that I celebrated 19 years without alcohol December 2nd, but I do think we need a drinking game, because at least one time an episode, Hi-Fi Elvis says it's stochastic terrorism. And I think
Yes,
that's the time to take a
wrong?
shot. No, you're not. You're not. It is stochastic. Okay, and
That's
with
the worst
that,
part.
Congratulations, Heidi. Proud of you.
yeah, thank you so
This
much.
fantastic, Heidi.
Yeah, if I could get through the last 5 years, man,
Yeah, no shit.
it was, yeah. So thank you very much. But I want to say that right now, thank you. That was a hell of a fucking great open to our show. We are now going to get to Paul Mason. He is an author. He is a newsman. He is ex-BBC, ex-Channel 4. He is an fucking love him is what he is. So right now we're seeing you a little bit blurry, Paul. So we're going to kind of toy around until we get a clearer view. I know you guys. Yeah. Okay. Could he hear us? Is the key thing.
I can hear you. Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Fantastic.
Hello,
if we have to, you can put maybe a profile shot up, but try to stay with us. You'll probably unfreeze, and the less you move around, the better.
Sure.
Paul, there you are. Holy shit, we're happy you're here. The boys prepared. They read material, like they did their homework. I thought one thing that we could do is you could give people like your elevator, pitch on who and what you are. And then I thought we might listen to a little bit of that audio from the elderly person who was installed as our fake president a few years ago to kick us off on a conversation on January 6th.
Hello. Well, yes, my name is Paul Mason. I am a British journalist. Sorry, I'm just taking my weird bubble off my earphones there. So, yeah, my name's Paul Mason. I'm a British journalist. I'm speaking to you from London, where it is almost midnight.
Yes.
And if you see something move behind me, it's my dog. She's probably asleep, but it's midnight. And so I during my time as a TV journalist, I covered some of the amazing global stories. Enron, sort of Lehman Brothers, the rise of the Chinese workers' movement, the global financial crisis, the Gaza war, Greece, you name it. I've done all that.
Hurricane Katrina.
To Katrina, I was there when Bush came over in his Pavlo helicopter, and I don't watch as people were kind of thousands of black people, mainly black people, assembled around the clover leaves outside New Orleans, and Bush just kind of came and looked in a helicopter. But so I did that, and then the reason I quit was, I had a very good job, in the a kind of very sort of front and center of the news bulletin I worked for. In the middle of the last decade, it became obvious to me that huge changes in politics were about to happen. Not just, I didn't predict Trump, but I predicted Brexit. Brexit was the same phenomenon as Trump, the mobilization of white working class people around a nationalistic agenda, to which liberalism, and even conservative liberalism here in Britain, the traditional conservative center right, they had no answer to it. And I just wanted to be in that world in a way where you can state your opinions, go on demonstrations, which you can't do if you're a public service TV broadcast. That's right. Not here. In your country, you can more or less call for genocide on TV and still be called a journalist, but not here.
Well, you can still be a politician.
I know. I appreciate you sharing that, because I tapped out of corporate news in 2013 and told the only female manager left in the building when I walked out that I would see her in the bread line before I ever came back to the building. And that's a true story. And I believe bias should be truth. And I don't believe in this Roger Ailes both sidesism shit. You can't have somebody who's a liar and someone who's telling the truth and call that journalism. So I'm so glad that you are free to write the books you do, How to Stop Fascism, and, and be here with us today stating your full-throated opinion of things. So on that happy note, do you want to play a little bit of that audio just so we can cue Paul up into talking about January 6th and how he sees it?
Sure thing.
And I'm going to have to unplug because I get triggered.
Well, let me find this first here, guys. Yep. I'll pop it in when I find it here, Heidi.
Okay, no worries. What he was going to play was the audio that you selected in your podcast where you, just days after January 6th, I think by January 11th, you had an incredible, insightful analysis of what that was and why it compared to 1930s fascism. And so we here understand and believe you, and we're students of this. How can you tell our viewers who may or may not know what this is, what happened, and what led up to January 6th? Anything you think that's most important as the takeaways?
We know a lot more now than we knew right after January the 6th. And I think in summary, we could say, this is how the event looks to me, almost a year on, 11 months on. It was a serious attempt by the president to force Pence to go down a legal route that had been pre-prepared, which would have annulled the general election, the presidential election. That was we now know that Trump was ensconced with lawyers, ensconced with advisors. They had the plan they needed to do, which was to simply throw back the votes of various states at the states themselves. The mobilization was meant, I think, to do two things. It was, first of all, meant to pressure Trump and the Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill to go along with that process. It was also clearly, I think this will come out, meant to create a physical fact, a physical reality, that there is no government, that there is chaos in Washington. And, imagine if the scenes playing out of, people sitting on Nancy Pelosi's desk, people, cops being seriously injured. If that had played out at a time when Pence had said, you know what, 4 states, you're going to have to re-vote. That was serious. Now, why is it important to say that? Because a lot of people, especially people on the left, said then it's not a serious thing. It's it's an armed shit show. It's just kind of a product of this weird and surreal America that we live in, and it was never serious. I think we now know, because of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, they coordinated with the Trump machine. It was serious. Now, was it fascism? No. We need to understand that the threat of fascism in the 20th century lies, it's immediate for those of us who are fighting it. I have film of people sort of shouting into my face, we've researched you, you're a traitor to our country, here in Britain, on the main street, on the equivalent of Capitol Hill, on Whitehall. Yeah. But it's not the main problem now. The main problem is the alliance of a radicalized far right in your country, as you're just talking about, with guns, with a nationalist orientated section of the elite that is cut loose from the globalist rules-based system and simply wants to enrich itself and to maintain power and to make it impossible for any kind of liberalism, let alone the left. I'm a member of a left-wing, a Labour, a social democratic party. It's liberalism. They want to make it impossible for liberalism, for a rules-based order, for the rule of law to exist. And therefore, I think that's what's symbolic and a kind of future-pointing, the future-pointing nature of 6th of January is that what they will always do is they will always create a space for mayhem on the streets, for racist violence, violent misogyny. That's the new deal of politics we're dealing with. And my frustration, Heidi, and to the rest of you, is that so many people within the liberal establishment, the corporate media people, the advisors, even the lawmakers, they cannot see how close we are to the complete disintegration of the deal we have had since at least 1945. So that's my pitch for for my perspective of things.
And what I would love, love you to tell our viewers about, what does Trump represent and what is his project?
Well, look, I think that's now 4 years on. It's much easier to get our heads around. I don't know if you remember, we were all watching American TV and we were going, we were having that oh shit moment when we kept seeing pundits saying, oh, the establishment will keep him under control. They will. He'll just be a normal right-wing president. It'll be like Bush, but not so clever. But no, we now know what it is all over the world. I'm getting a big echo from myself here, by the way. All over the world.
Let me just check something. When I get booted off the system and come back, it screws up my audio. Is it better now, Sean?
That's good.
Okay. You shouldn't have an echo now.
Yeah. I do. I can hear it.
Okay.
I don't know if you can turn me down.
Yeah.
I'll push on through. All over the world, sections of what we once called the neoliberal elite, the globalists, sections decided they'd had enough of globalization. And you can see why. It's a negative sum game, unless you're in the Chinese elite. There is less growth, there is less wealth. The only thing that's keeping the whole system alive is central bank money. In your country, in my country, in Europe, in China. Now, the thing is, at a certain point in the middle of the last decade, a bunch of rich people said, you know what, enough globalization, we just go nationalist. We carry on with the free market, with the corporate welfare, with privatization, high sort of inequality, but we do it on a national basis. And what we then seek is a new alliance. The German-American philosopher Hannah Arendt had a great phrase for this in the 1930s. She called it the temporary alliance of the elite and the mob. I mean, and what better work phrase could describe? You see, Jared Kushner on the platform on January 6th with his kind of rich coterie alongside the classic mob. The New Deal is that we are dealing with the alliance of the elite and the mob around, in most countries, an ethno-nationalist project. And it's overt. And here's the danger. It's never been stated so overtly. Sure, the Republicans always had a white supremacist wing, and they had used the so-called Southern strategy in your country to cement that around them. But the leadership was never overtly white supremacist. No, we've got that here now. We've got it here with Boris Johnson. We've got it here with our Prime Minister. We've got, tonight we've seen the launch of a French presidential candidate, Eric Zemmour. If your viewers don't know that name, get to know it. He's the new far-right candidate in France. And he's not just kind of making kind of, polite allusions to a white supremacy agenda. His phraseology is indistinguishable, for example, from Tucker Carlson. They're saying the great replacement theory is happening. The great replacement of the white people of Europe is happening through migration. It's a form of genocide against our race. This guy is likely to be second. If we are really lucky, he's second. He doesn't win. So what's going on is within that new alliance of the elite and the mob, as always, for those of us who study the 1930s, what the elite never realizes is that the mob aspect of it always has its own agenda. And they can't just switch on and switch off the anger and frustration and legitimization of violence that they've already done. They can't switch it off once it suits them to switch it off. That, of course, is what happened in the Weimar Republic in Germany in the 1930s, 20s and early 30s. There were a bunch of rich people who thought Adolf Hitler was their plaything, their tool, their puppet in politics. He would get to power, but they would rule. Within 6 months of Hitler coming to power, every right-wing party, including really right-wing parties which looked and sounded like Trump's Republicans, was dissolved because fascism has a radicalizing dynamic of its own. So that's the perspective I'm working within, and I can't ring the alarm bell loud enough. I don't care if people say to me, this guy keeps warning about fascism, and we've been warned about this before. I don't care if reputationally people kind of start hitting on those of us who are saying this is so serious. Because democracy is so fragile. It is modern democracy is so fragile. And already, we blithely look at riot cops. If the average person in the 1930s in Britain, Germany, France looked at a riot cop today, they wouldn't even know what they were dealing with. The technology of repression that existed the last time fascism existed was peanuts compared to what we have today.
Well, we also have the internet, which is a very different thing to add to the ingredients, which makes everything far faster, far more intense, because they're controlling somebody's entire information space, right?
Yeah.
They're insulating them into this fascist propaganda that over time basically just brainwashes them. It delivers undue influence.
Is that one of the points you make, Paul? Is that the speed at which QAnon wanted to have something accomplished resulted in them becoming labeled as a domestic terrorist group? Is that right? Is that what the?
Well, look, what the FBI noticed about QAnon was that in most fascist ideologies, for example, the European New Right, you may have heard of Alexander Dugin in Russia, or Guillaume Fay was a far right fascist writer in France. What they want is day X, the day the Western system collapses, an ethnic civil war sweeps the world and ends up creating massive mono-ethnic states the size of continents. This is their fantasy. But because it is a fantasy, it always has to happen in the deep distance. And so what they do is prepare. They're prepping, they're gathering the guns, they're stockpiling the ammunition, they're making the death list. We 1/6 of all terrorist prisoners in Britain right now is a far right prepper. It used to be everyone was Islamist, and before that everyone was Irish Republican in Britain's jails. Now it's far right preppers. But what the FBI said quite rightly about QAnon, the problem with QAnon, apart from that it's nuts, another problem is that it's co-created. Q himself, whoever it was, is allowing other people to co-create the ideology. But the real problem is it brings day X really close to us. Is that in QAnon, day X was meant to be 6th of January, if you think about it. Or it was October this year.
Well, they're not thinking back.
They're not thinking in mid-20th century, 21st century. They're thinking about now, and therein lies the danger of it.
And they want a global ethnic war, as you have explained. And you also have explained that the way you fight fascism is in people's heads. And I'd like you to expound on that, because what they're forcing us to do with all this ugly right now is swing baseball bats at each other, which then gets them their global ethnic war. And I'd like you to explain how to fight fascism in people's heads. You also said the left got it wrong in the 30s, and I want you to tell us how to get it right. How do we de-escalate this shit?
So, I've been engaged with fascism and anti-fascism as a leftist in Britain, both intellectually and physically, for most of my life. But it was only when I saw QAnon that I really understood I really began to understand what had happened in those moments of mass flourishing of fascist movements here in Europe in the 30s, because we had the evidence there. We had the writing of some of the historians have been little read. Some of the psychologists have been forgotten, but they, at the time, a lot of people at once noticed that what was going on, particularly with Nazism in Germany, was like a mass quasi-religious conversion. That's how you go from 2% to 17%. in a year, which Hitler did in 1930. And so I've had to reframe what it means to be an anti-fascist. I think I'm far more now concerned. Of course, I think the people who do the monitoring and the infiltration and the identification of far-right extremists are right to do so. But I think we need to win an intellectual battle. I know when I say the word intellectual, it's the wrong word. We need to win a battle of ideas that really cannot be won unless we mobilize beyond the left. We need to trigger liberalism into defending itself. And so I think it's about, the techniques are well known to those NGOs and campaign groups that fight fascism, pre-bunking. So getting politicians to say, in advance, for example, there is the theories of the vaccine being and Bill Gates injecting your arm with a 5G chip are wrong, people. It is ludicrous to claim so. People who claim so are lying. It's the same with the Great Replacement. The leader of our opposition party, Keir Starmer, of the Labour Party, he was confronted live on air with a woman who rang and said, I'm a working class woman. I feel my culture is being destroyed by migrants. They're coming here and they're invading us and it's going to wipe us out. And what he should have said is, Madam, that is the Great Replacement theory. It is a fascist theory and it is rubbish. And you are wrong to even be speaking about it live on radio. But what he'd said, because he'd never heard of it, because the politicians don't read about politics, they're the least knowledgeable about political theory of anybody else, anybody in the political world. He just said, well, I hear what you're saying, but I disagree with you. No, you can't do that. We've got to go on an offensive in favor of rationalism, in favor of rationality, in favor of science, in favor of the rule of law. And what you notice, the more you think about the need to do that, the more you notice how little liberalism itself does of that. So that's what I want to do. You ask about what was wrong with in the 30s. What was wrong in the 20s and 30s is that the far left and the socialist left fought each other, never united. There were deep sociological reasons for that, very deep sociological reasons that we probably find hard to get our heads around. We were talking about employed workers versus unemployed workers. But in the end, what flipped it around was the communist movement, of which I'm immensely critical. But the Communist International said, you know what, this is an existential moment. We need to find unity between communists, socialists, and liberals. And they called it the Popular Front. One of the first things you learn if you're on the left is, oh, it failed. It was no good. It betrayed the workers. Well, it did all of those things. But in France and Spain, it prevented fascist governments being elected. And that's why I'm so. What I think happened in America with the Biden victory was effectively a version of that. That is, Biden and the kind of Stacey Abrams, the Joe Biden, the AOC kind wing of the Democrats were on the same project: defeat Trump. Do they have to agree? No. Do they agree? No. Does one side repress the other and throw shit at each other? Yes, they do, unfortunately. But what for me, the model is France, 1936. You try and do as much as you can unity and action between liberalism, socialism, and the far left, and all the other things we have now, like Greens, like black liberation politics. You bring them all together around one goal, which is to defend democracy, and in the American context, the rule of law.
Yeah.
That I just wanted to say that resonates especially well with me over the last few days. I've had a lot of people with angry with me for saying something about Susan Sarandon, and a whole bunch of them said to me out loud, liberalism and anti-fascism cannot coexist.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, and these are all far leftists, the kind of commie, like angry Antifa types, and it's a real problem. There's a very large segment of the left that has been more or less co-opted into a version of fascism, and they go around calling people like me shit libs. And I'm sorry, but
There's a
please find
radicalization
somebody who's louder about anti-fascism than I am.
Well, I think that's an amazing point you brought up, because if they got it wrong in the 30s, we have an opportunity to get it right.
Yeah.
And the way to get it right is to put people under the same fucking umbrella who do not want to see fascism, and build that army and get them to defend democracy in all its imperfections, or we will be looking at it in the rearview mirror. Go ahead and say what you want to say, Paul, and I've got a couple questions for you.
Yeah. So what one problem you have specifically in the United States is the Constitution. I mean, we
kind of like it, but
yeah, no,
we know what you mean.
To an outsider, it looks like this: the First Amendment gives fascists the right to call for genocide, and the Second Amendment gives them the right to do it. Now, in other perfectly capitalist countries that are not socialist paradises like Germany, there are actually anti-fascist laws. You cannot call for genocide. You cannot wear a swastika. No, I think that there was in my book, I described the work of Karl Lowenstein. Now, he was a German liberal who moved to Yale. He became a refugee in the 30s, and he wrote a very influential essay called Militant Democracy. And what he argued with the liberals of his time and the conservatives, the purpose of democracy is not to facilitate fascism, it is to stop it. And therefore, I don't expect the First or Second Amendment to be repealed anytime soon, but you can, especially at a state level, if a state level law can exonerate Carl Rittenhouse for shooting people on a demonstration, then a state level law in America could do the opposite. It could criminalize uniforms. It could criminalize, open carry and the rest of it. You could do a lot through law. And the one thing Lowenstein insisted on in the 30s was that the police should be policed. The police have to be subject to the rule of law itself.
Damn straight.
That's why in Germany there is an anti-fascist police force. One of its main tasks is to police the police and army. It looks for fascists in the armed forces, in the police, and it finds them. Last year, Nordkreuz, look it up, Google it, Nordkreuz, 25 activists, mainly ex-police, ex-military, they'd assembled a 25,000 strong death list, arms caches and the rest of it, from police computers. So, okay, that's a terrible thing. The law didn't stop them doing that, but it did prosecute them. And it did. And having an anti-fascist police force, I think this is one thing I think Biden has to think about how the FBI itself does. If the FBI is to defend American democracy, I mean, who knew the FBI would be relying on the FBI to defend fucking American democracy? But if it is to do that, then it's got to learn again lessons from the 30s.
Yeah.
That's how
the problem with these lessons is that we're totally not learning them. The guy in charge of the FBI is Christopher Wray,
right.
Who's in the Federalist Society. Right?
We are going to scream this loud, though. We are going to get thousands of people to scream this message and these
damn
messages.
Straight we are.
We are going to be cutting this up and putting out little quick hits on this. We have, between all of us, we do have a relatively strong presence, and we are going to get this message out. This is so freaking important. I cannot take notes fast enough. Unity in action. Quick note. I came into this, 2015, 2016. I'd become an environmentalist. This is a paper straw. There's no plastic involved in this. And I have to say that because my friend Deanna Cohen watches, and she heads the Plastic Pollution Coalition, and she'd be pissed if she thought I was backsliding. And I found you because I did this major thread, 0 Days to Waste, on dealing with climate justice and climate change issues. And you said, what's left of capitalism is going green. That's how it's going to happen. It has to go green in order to survive. And what we all find in our work is it's always the fossil fuel fascists or big oil behind so much of what we are dealing with, whether it's anti-vax or school board menace we always
right.
find their money. And so can you speak on, we got only a couple minutes left, but
Yeah.
anything that you can speak on that to try to get people to step out and say, this is the big critical view?
Look, if I were, I'm a lifelong leftist. When I hear a racist or an anti-Semite or a violent misogynist, one of the first things I think is, unlike today's generation, I think there's somebody who hates the world as it is. Maybe we can convince them. No, you don't convince them by agreeing with them. You convince them by disagreeing with them. How many of us in the labor movement, we go into workplaces, we start a new job, we get the union ticket, and we hear the racism and the sexism, and we're out there, we're not writing these people off. We're saying, with work, with education, with an argument, they could flip. That's, if that's not possible, then we're in deep trouble, because millions of Americans voted for Trump. We've got to think of ways to flip them. But the first set of people we need to flip before them, or I speak now, metaphorically, in this order, are the liberals. The liberals, I don't mean Hillary Clinton. I mean the ordinary person with a college education, maybe not even with a college education, sitting there in their small town, thinking, I quite like America being the greatest country in the world and a free place and the rule of law, and I salute the flag and all the rest of it. Well, here's the thing I want to say to them. 1859, John Brown goes into Harper's Ferry, tries to kick off the American Civil War, fails. Okay, gets killed. 2 years later, there is a civil war. If you are not careful, the Trump January 6th insurrection will be like a bookend event to John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. It will lead in 2023-24, as Trump makes his second bid, it will lead to mass violence. And you need to strengthen your democracy. And the way you do that is by convincing people that democracy, A, is a great principle, and B, delivers to them. So you need to deliver. I think this is what Biden does get in a way that the Clintons never got. Biden understands that American capitalism has to start delivering to American workers. And now we can only work with the material we have. And the material we have is Biden in America. I'm sad to say Macron in France. Here, the Labour Party I work in. And we need to convince the people who go, yeah, but I'm not interested in fascism. I'm not interested in all this democracy stuff. That it's like that. I'll end with a quote from Leon Trotsky. Trotsky once had an argument with pacifists, and he said, look, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. And I'd say that about fascism. You may not be interested in who's who in the Proud Boys, who's who in the Oath Keepers, but they are interested in you, because they're going to take down American democracy before 2025 if they can. And that's the sobering thought. For us in the west of Europe, our entire security relies on a stable and outward-looking and liberal America. So if that goes, we are up to in deep shit. But by raising this point, I just want to try to focus people's attentions on the positives, the things we can do.
Yes. Yes.
You caught everybody.
I just wanted to let that sit for a minute.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Holy shit. That's it.
What can we do?
We need to take it seriously, and you're exactly right. This entire project is about preparing for mass violence. And
I don't care which direction you're looking. I don't care if you're a social democrat or a central capitalist. If you believe in democracy, we all need to be marching the same direction right now. Period. End of goddamn story.
And there's a lot of money invested in trying to divide us up, and the racial issue is continually trying to, it's always being weaponized. And I think you had a beautiful line about how so much of the base is driven by fear of freedom. Black Lives Matters, 40,000 years of keeping women's, lib down. And is there one beautiful line you can say to the base that we can try to get out into the collective conscience of our country?
I don't know whether it's a beautiful line, but I think it's a line that comes from Daniel Geran, who was an anarchist who was in Nazi Germany in the first months, and he'd been on both sides, on the communist side and on the Nazi side, studying it. And he said, when it gets to as big as it is, the only way to stop it is not to repress it, not simply to repress fascism, but you have to provide a living, breathing alternative for people who are sick of the world. You know, if you've ever met some of these QAnon people, they feel liberated by QAnon. It's the best thing that happened to them. So we've got to give them something better.
Okay.
We can't, but that's what we need to convince liberalism of.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's very emotional. We've been watching the destruction of our country for a minute. Thank you.
Well, let's just be strong and we can win. We can win. We can put them. We can put them in a box. It's been done. We can put them in the box marked "It's over again," guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
We did it before.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Sean to the rescue. So would you please?
Dear.
Thank you.
We've got to come in with some armor.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul
That's
Mason.
amazing.
We love you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you,
please
Paul.
stay with us 2
Bye-bye.
more minutes if you don't mind, because we're going to do our digital dissent now. Sean, our anarchist art director, co-producer, musicologist, he does a digital dissent, and we'd love you to stay with us if you can. And if not, I know it's late, but thank you for the inspiration. Sure. It's very meaningful.
All right, guys. You ready, Heidi? You want to run it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. This is another by popular demand from the audience in the comments. So you guys, everybody wanted some more Marjorie Taylor Greene. So here's her trying to answer the question, what does Congress do?
How does Congress work? We have been the most blessed nation in the history of the world. We've been the most blessed people. I mean, if you're a woman listening to this show, you know a washing machine is a blessing. A dishwasher is a blessing. We have got to stop being lazy. We have got to stop saying we're too busy. We have got to stop saying, oh, but we go to work. Let me tell you, I know what we all do. We go on vacations. We go and have wine with our girlfriends. We go hunting and fishing, and we have our hobbies. If we're able to have all these wonderful hobbies and these great lives, then we're able to take time out and hold Congress accountable. Shut the government down. Shut it down.
Go ahead. I think the best thing we can do right now is try to power down. We copy you down, Eagle.
Guess what? I've been the most effective member of Congress this session. How does Congress work? When they kicked me off committees, Republicans over here said, nay. The Democrats said, yay. What just happened? What? How does Congress work? I don't know. I don't really care about PhDs from Harvard. How does Congress work? Well, I don't know. I haven't met anybody that I think is smart enough.
The T-shirt is from
Cat Turd.
There it is.
What? All right, then.
That's it. That's her answer.
There's no one more worthy of scorn.
I think that my refrain is to shoot him into space.
That's right.
If we could just shoot him into space on our digital dissent, that'd be lovely. Paul.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Paul.
Pleasure. Good night.
Wow. Wow. Sean.
Well, shit.
Yep.
Sean. I needed the lulls there because this, you know.
That one was off the hook, man.
It's a little heady. You gotta watch that.
I expect 24,000 views by 3 p.m. tomorrow.
It's hard to edit her pacing. Like her language is just fucking balls to the wall, 1,000 miles a minute. So it's like 1 minute. It's like no.
She has a job to do, and it's to help the autocratic capture of our country. All right, gentlemen. Well, we have so much to think about. We have so much work ahead. Episode 4, flippin' ruled. I just can't thank you enough for participating in, the salvation of our democracy.
See you guys. Talk to you soon. Go out.
Stay rad, everybody. Stay with us and stay rad.
What's up?
Oh, if only people could see what happens during the credits. All right, you guys. I love you. Bye.